White balance is one of those subjects where people tend to get into the technical side of how to do a technically correct white balance, but what we come away with in the end is not really an understanding of what on earth we're supposed to be doing with it. So in this video, I'm going to try and explain to you how to use white balance a bit more artistically rather than what's technically correct. So when it comes to doing portraits, white balance can have a really big impact on the way our picture looks. Let's look at this picture here. At the moment, you can see I've got a Kelvin of 6,000, and the number itself doesn't really mean that much, but we can go warmer and cooler. Let's do that now. So if I warm this picture up by moving the slider to the right, we can see our color temperature value here is at 8,800. And we can see the way the picture changes. We might like the look of this more, we might not. We might want to do something where we go a bit colder, like this. Maybe we bring it down to 4,700. We can sort of get to feel these numbers over time by just looking and seeing, this made the picture look like that. This made the picture look like this. What would have been technically correct might have been if we'd use auto somewhere around here. That's roughly what I'd set myself anyway, but I might not want to stop there. I might warm the picture up, but look when we use the tint slider as well. When we've got the picture warmer like this, if I move the slider towards green, it changes the way the picture feels. If I move it towards magenta, it changes it again. Let's bring the temperature down again to about 4,700 and watch what the tint slider does. If I move it to the left, we get this really cold green, almost turquoise effect, right? And if I move it to the right, we get a really different look again, and we get much more into the blue and a little bit of that orange and reds coming through. If I move the slide even more to the right, I actually turn this blue background, it was actually blue in real life. I start to turn it towards grey. This kind of makes sense that the background's turning grey, right? Because if the background's blue, which it was in camera, as I move the temperature slider to the right, I'm getting rid of the blue. And now we can see the picture's gone almost to grey. This means I've got artistic choices that I can make. I can choose whether I want this very grey look, or I might cool it down slightly and bring some of this blue tone back in, which was actually present in the picture in real life. So what you're seeing now is the white balance that I selected and I chose. But you can see that the way that you choose the white balance can have a big impact on the way our pictures look. I'm going to show you some outdoor portrait and a couple of wedding photography images as well to demonstrate the differences and some of the choices that you can make when it comes to picking your white balance and what's going to work best for the way that you want your pictures to look. What you want your pictures to look like is completely down to you. We should not be trying to chase what the correct white balance is, because this is artistic. We make it look like how we want it to look, not what some camera or chart says it should be. So when it comes to outdoor photography, we still find that white balance has a big impact. I'm going to show you a daytime picture and then a nighttime picture and then a couple of wedding examples as well. So in this daytime picture, my model is lit diagonally from behind. And we've got this kind of soft light because the concrete that's around her is reflecting up a lot of light. So she's sort of in the shade a bit as well, and she's getting a lot of reflected light on her. This looks quite soft, but when your subject is in this kind of shaded light like this, the shaded light is a little bit cooler than if you're directly in the sun. So we might think here, daylight is a really good option for picking for our white balance. Well, let's switch over to daylight and we see how that looks. That looks nice. I think it looks pretty decent. But the thing for me is that it looks a little bit cold because when we're in shade, shaded light has a cooler temperature than sort of direct sunlight. And this is why we have other settings in our camera. When you look through your white balance in your menu, you will see other options such as cloudy and shade. So we're in this shaded area now. Daylight means we're in sort of normal middle of the day daylight. And that works really well for a multitude of situations. But once we get into this shaded light, we can have a look and see in our list here, we can try cloudy. And that has warmed things up. We notice here that in our Kelvin slider, we've gone from 5,500, which is daylight. When we go up to cloudy, we see it's warmed the picture up. It's brought that life back into her skin again, and it looks better. I really like how cloudy looks here. We could try shade. Let's do that. When we try shade, it goes even warmer. And I like this too. I think this works really well. So I'm going to brighten the picture up a little bit. And then we'll see. We'll pick between cloudy and shade. And I think I'm going to go for shade here. Let me know in the comments, do you prefer daylight, cloudy or shade for this? I think shade has just got that little bit of an edge because it just warms everything up and it looks really nice here. So this picture we're looking at now is a nighttime portrait. It's lit with this white light that's on the side of this building. Now I've set the white balance here to daylight, so you can see if I set my camera to daylight what it would have looked like. And it looks nice, I think it looks good, but it's far too kind of yellowy for her. I think it's gone too far over to one side and the tint is wrong. For me, this is too warm. What we could do is we could cool this down. At 3600, we get a much better balance. But when I look at her skin and her hair, I can see there's too much green in it. This is something you have to train your eye to get. It takes time. But when skin and hair has this sort of really yellowy, but it's kind of a murky yellow, that's because there's green in the yellow. Now watch, as I move the tint slider to the right, just a bit, look how that cleans up that tone in her skin and it just looks more natural. It looks better. We could do this, or we could go further if we wanted to. Now, you might not choose to do this. I'm just going to show you what's possible. So let's say I move this even further over to the left. I might go for this cool tone like this. I really like this. I think this is an interesting look. If I'd set my camera to daylight, I wouldn't be seeing this on the back of the camera. What I'd see all the time is this, and it's not what I want. So if I left my camera set to daylight, that wouldn't work. Now, let's have a look what happens if I'd left it set to cloudy, which is another thing that a lot of people do. It looks even warmer, and this is moving further away from what I want. If I bring this back down to somewhere around here, if this is what I want, I can look at my settings in Lightroom. I can see that I like a temperature that's around 3000, something like that. And I can set that manually in my camera. I can set my temperature to 3000. And then when I'm taking my pictures and I'm looking on the back of the camera, I'll be able to see it looking like this straight out of camera. And what I can do is I can show my model as well. I can say, look, I'm getting the look that I want. If this is my mood that I've gone for the shoot, I'll be able to show it on the back of the camera. They'll be able to see it, and it confirms to me that I'm getting the shots the way that I want them to look as well. This is not technically correct white balance. Let's use auto and see what it gives us. But when we go to auto, it gives us this, and I think this actually looks really nice in its own way as well. This is around 3000. I think it's good. I like it the way it is. But what we can see from this is how much of a huge difference of the mood our white balance is making. Now, let's go and look at a couple of wedding photos where this is more just a stylistic choice. In this picture here of the couple, I've got the white balance set to daylight. When I look at this, I think this looks nice, but daylight is always in these shaded areas as we have here, going to give you a slightly cooler cast to the picture. There's nothing wrong with that. I actually really like the way that this looks. But this was shot in my Nikon D600, and when I'm shooting my Nikon D600, in these kind of environments where I'm using shade a lot, I do like to set the white balance to cloudy, but that's my personal preference. If I set this over to cloudy, it just warms everything up a bit. And do you know what it feels like? You know when it's summer and everything, the ground, everything around you is just radiating the heat that's been baked into it? It gives me that feeling. I get that feeling of like, yeah, I can feel the warmth in the air now, that's come back. And that's why I prefer that. So let me switch this back to daylight again for you so you can see what that looks like. And I really like this. This looks fresh and clean. I think it's a really nice look. But this is a summer photo. This is a very hot day. It's more like what it was actually like on the day. But let's try shade as well and see what that looks like. And then there's shade, and I think that looks really good too. It's just bumped it up another notch with that heat and that warmth. The question that will bring for a lot of people is like, why bother when you can just do it in the editing software afterwards? If I can see what my picture is going to look like in camera before it gets into the editing software, I have a better idea of whether I'm hitting what I want to hit. For instance, this picture here on the Canon 5D Mark III, if I'm shooting this in cloudy white balance in camera, I know from their skin tones that I see on the back of the camera, and I know from the atmosphere that's giving me that I'm nailing the shot. I'm getting the shot that I want. I'm getting that kind of warmth and that feeling from the lighting, because when we do photography, it is about lighting. Something I think that people don't understand always with light is that light comes with a temperature. And that temperature that the light has affects the mood of what we get. And we can artificially pump that up in post. Yes, we can do that. But if we can see it on the back of the camera, we know that we're getting the shots that we want and we're getting the look that we want. Because sometimes certain light mixes, certain color casts that can come off of grass, of red brick walls, of other lighting that is in the picture can mess our picture up. It might look okay on the back of the camera, but it's better to know that we've got it right by setting it manually, and it gives us the confidence that we're doing our job properly. But the downside of setting it manually all the time and constantly doing it is it just becomes this constant irritation. If you have to keep checking it and keep saying, is this right? Is this the right thing? Then it's going to become something that gets in your way, and you don't want that. I hope that was useful. Remember to check out the links in the description down below. Give me a thumbs up if you liked that and found it useful. Drop me a comment. Remember, tell me, which did you prefer, the daylight, cloudy or shade white balances in some of the pictures that I showed you? And I will see you again in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.